Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Toulis.
There's a prison inmate who, if he doesn't have his medication, his antiverts, will have his head spinning and the cells of his bar going around in circles so badly that he will be forced to lie on the floor and keep his eyes closed. His name is Grenda Harmer, and I got word of a letter he has sent to Dr. Edmund Lane saying, "This morning I discovered you discontinued my antiverts. I have a well-documented history of needing antiverts. In fact, TCIX medical staff documented the incident when I had to be placed in the infirmary and stuck an IV in my arm because the attack was that severe. You've not sent me for testing to determine whether I still need antiverts, I guess, or not. Discontinuing my antiverts without having me tested is negligence. Even you stated you had to have me tested to determine if I need antivert still. On February 27, I plan to file a complaint with the medical board." I sent a copy of this document to Nasa Taylor from the Department of Corrections. She says that, well, he's just a liar. You can't believe anything he says. It's just all just noise from this particular highly articulate inmate who knows the rules inside and out. And that's why I've had correspondence for some time now with Grenda Harmer in Morgan County Correctional Complex. And he says that his supply of this medication has been stopped. And that is what you have. You have nausea. Of course, if the world is spinning, you have nausea, and you're incapable. You're very sick. You just can't function without the medication. If the lack of it causes those problems. So I'm trying to follow the story there, and just thought I'd let you know about it, and suggest that we should be thinking in realistic ways now about the national economy and the life here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County. What is ahead? Are good things ahead for us? Is the Trump boom going to prosper all of us? Or is there something that Donald Trump, even in his very best, is not seeing or not perhaps accounting for? And that would be, as I take it in my reading, that would be the debt bubble, which has ballooned assets and kept the valuations of stock artificially high. Now, stocks, there are about 6 main players in the stock market. All the rest of the companies are lagging or failing or falling. The main tech stocks are very few in number, and the whole market seems to be riding the indices, or seem to be riding on those. And there's a lot of manipulation also in the stock market that is keeping the valuations high, and those would be what you could call financial engineering, of buying back your stocks with borrowed money. You borrow money, buy back your stock to keep the price up. And so you have, again, an artificial sustaining element in the high prices of stock. And all undergirding all these strong valuations, undergirding the changing skyline even of Chattanooga, is debt. And the debt is ballooning because it's so inexpensive to obtain it, right? You can create debt very easily in an artificially low interest rate economy where you have suppression of the rate of interest by the central bank, the Federal Reserve System, and who thinks its job is employment. Well, the Fed has come to own the national economy, and to create the bubble economy. It comes from that. And as David Stockman traces out in his book, the coming of the futures market in value 100%. In paper.
When he was running, we had about 17 candidates for
the futures market in money and currency that creates even more bizarre and amazing financial instruments. And we have in Chattanooga a booming economy as we think, and I'd say it's a bubble. And look at the fruit of it. That would be new apartment complexes, new retail complexes. Even though the retail sector is hugely overbuilt, there are complexes going up all over the place. Over by the electronics store near Hamilton Place Mall, there's a whole complex being added to one that still has empties in it. So how is that? You have empty rental suites and a very high, very expensive rents, and yet new ones are going up. Well, there seems to be something amiss. If you look at the situation in malls, it's pretty bleak. Also, there's a story in the Wall Street Journal today about mall vacancies at a 6-year high. It's 8.4% in the first quarter. It's up from 8.3% in the fourth quarter, and the highest since the fourth quarter of 2012, according to Peter Grant in the Wall Street Journal. There's REI's Inc. has done a study, 77 metropolitan areas, coming up with this information. Meanwhile, neighborhood and community shopping centers in 41 of 77 areas have experienced an increase in vacancy during the 12 months ending on the 1st of March. The first quarter tends to see the lowest activity. However, this report says this was an unusually slow quarter for retail, leasing, and construction. So you have Northgate staggering. Hamilton Place seems to be doing still very well, and so there's that sector, older style of living, older style of shopping, and getting together with people at malls that has faded. As have playgrounds. You notice that playgrounds are rarely used. I live in Saudi Daisy and sometimes pass the walking track that has the helicopter, and a very nice, very safe, perhaps too safe set of jungle gym type toys in a wooded lot, in a wood chip strewn lot there in the middle of the track. Not very many people go there. People don't play anymore. Children don't play anymore. Children don't ride bikes anymore. You'll have a 15-year-old who can manipulate Photoshop, but he doesn't know how to ride a bike, right? And you have very strange things like that. So what are we to make of this bubble that's keeping stock prices artificially up through these stock buybacks and in the future? What about us? If you're invested highly in the market, I'd say be careful, and I would say if you're trying to think in a local-centric fashion, divest nationally and invest locally. And that means, investing locally means taking your capital and investing it maybe in yourself, right? Maybe you, if you have a business or work in a business as an employee, maybe it's time that you've take your savings and your invested capital and buy a business, right? Buy a franchise or start something in a recession-proof line and be the owner, right? We don't need, in Chattanooga, I suggest, more employees. We don't need more people to come into town and hire people. What we need to have more importantly than that, would be more owners. We have a cartel economy, and it's an economy that is not in the real world, probably because of the ability of creating easy credit. Again, the credit created very easily on these low interest terms with the banking sector, of course, the skimming sector of the economy, making a good profit. And there is a vice tightening. If you read Charles U. Smith, you can see this argument repeated. We have higher costs in many areas: student debt, for example, medical care, and telecom services. Very, very high costs, and wages are stagnating. And he says the vice will tighten until something breaks. It could be the currency. It could be the political status quo. It could be the credit and debt system, or all three. So these are the kinds of things that I'd like to suggest are ahead, and we need to have a local-centric perspective where there's a personal interest. Think about this: if you buy stock or trade in mutual funds, you're buying people, right? You're buying people through the netherworld, through an abstraction. You think that if you buy shares that it's being done on a report, or being done on some kind of evaluation or grading of a stock picking service, and you forget that you're investing in people. You're investing in people, and the valuation of that asset is controlled by very large institutions like CalPERS and other retirement systems that buy gigantic wads of stock at a time, or sell at a time. In a marketplace which is international, so you have people from far away who can control the value of that asset. And are you not at a grave risk, especially since we've been in an artificially rising economy, a debt-based rise in these markets for the past 10 years? right? Making good from the collapse of 2008. All artificial money, all loans, all leverage in this marketplace. So, are we there because we need to be, or are we there because we don't have options? And so, I'd say there's probably a good body of contrarian literature that I'd suggest that you read. David Stockman has some of his material available at Lew Rockwell, LewRockwell.com. He has a very good analysis of this market. He says that the economy, the federal government can't afford the tax breaks that is given. The debt will pass $21 trillion in the out years. And of course, the obligations of the national government are past, I think, $120 trillion. And also untenable. And the inflation that has been injected into the economy by the Fed and the banking sector has not gone into retail as much. In fact, the Fed still says it's trying to reach a 2% inflation target. It's just struggling to get there, so that you lose 2% of your value per year holding its currency. That's the target, and it can't get there in the retail sector. And that's because we have a fiat money economy. And caller, you're live on the air with David Tulis. What's on your mind?
David Stockman's a buffoon. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's an idiot. First of all, by giving people more money to spend, they're going to invest in themselves, their companies, and in the people they hire. If you let government keep it, what are they going to do? They're going to redistribute it and waste it. And plus, government sucks up the available credit. So what needs to happen is not only tax breaks, let people keep the money they earn, to prevent government from stealing it, and also reduction in spending. They both have to meet those goals. And the problem is you've got a renegade in there like Trump that's trying to do this, and he's being fought every step of the way by 80% of the Republicans, all the Democrats, because they're a bunch of pigs that want to steal your money and wallow in mud. So we have a guy in there a year and a half that's trying to fix, David, what has been going wrong in this country for over 100 years. I mean, there's never a bad tax break. By what authority does government steal all this money and then say, "Oh, we'll give you a little bit back"? You know what?
You're right.
Most Republicans and Democrats, you know what they like? They like to take everything you earn and keep it and give you back what they think you deserve. That's what they'd love to do. Everything you earn is ours. It's the government's. We earn it. And we'll give you back what we think you deserve.
Right. Well, I would say the Stockman analysis is one's recognition of its merits presumes certain things about whether people have an obligation to enter into the tax system.
The stock market is just a matter of having confidence in the system. When we see GDP at over 3%, there's confidence in the system. When we see the trade gap being lessened, there's confidence in the system. When jobs are coming back to America, there's confidence in the system. You know, we're no longer competing against each other. We're competing against the world, where China will give you a building, will give you people, will give you a tax break for 10 years to produce your widgets. So Tennessee has to be just as competitive. Tennessee has to say, okay, we're not going to be pigs for the next 10 years and tax you. There's a piece of land we're going to let you use for 10 years without being the swine we are, so you can actually develop an industry. Because I want to ask you this, David. In the old economy with Hillary and the dummy rats stealing all your money, if I said, here's $100 million, I want you to build a manufacturing plant. I want to see how you can do that in America or Tennessee without going broke. Because by the time you get through EPA, OSHA, lazy employees, local, state, federal government regulations, you're not going to have any money left. This is pure communism. The problem isn't Trump. It isn't tax breaks. It's the Congress and politicians stealing people's money that under the Constitution they have no authority to do, and they need banks.
Well, Mike, I think you're making a great point, and you're not being real precise there in what you're saying, but I think what you're saying reflects how people feel. And they like Trump because he is anti-establishment. He's sort of anti-deep state. He's not, in a way, he's playing with the deep state by naming John Bolton, for example, as national security advisor. On the other hand, he may just be using him as a pawn. I don't know how to evaluate Trump and whether he's really a pro-market person. He's not a constitutionalist, so he's not too particular about that. And some of the things that you and I make a big deal out of, he rejects as relevant at all. But he does have a very good deregulatory streak in him because he is a businessman and he understands how burdensome regulations are. So there he's very good, but he's also very confident in debt and believes, as Alexander Hamilton did, that debt's a good thing. It just has to be properly managed. Well, I don't think that anybody knows how to manage the debt and how large it's gotten. And the cartels, they want to be bailed out. The cartels that handle, for example, college loans. The feds took that over, and now the private banks that have some of that debt want the government to guarantee it, right? To make sure their books are in order, and students are relieved from the burden of having to pay the rest back. They're taking advantage of a very loose system that socializes risk and privatizes gain. The whole system is in that direction. Gain is private for your Phil Bredesons of the world, and risk is socialized. In other words, if you're a taxpayer, that risk is offloaded to you and to the government. Not that I think we should take the side of government, but here the government is well used by insiders, that the people that at the time of the founding, when de Tocqueville was visiting, they would call the moneyed interest. That was the term back in the late 1700s that was used on what we would call today the banking and financialization interest. And Stockman, you speak ill of, but I suggest nonetheless that you, the listener, go to LouRockwell.com and just look up some of Stockman's pieces there. He's had a series recently on the nature of the American system, much like his book, which I read every word of his book. Very, very fat volume. It took me a couple months to get through it, but highly, highly valuable work with some faults, but worth reading. My name is David Toulis. I'm glad you're giving me just a minute of your time here. We're at Nooga Radio 92.7 and 95.3 High D, HD, high definition digital radio. If you could graph out the rich sounds in that signal, you could hear an individual sound of my Adam's apple bobbing in my throat. It's so rich and so deep. That is to say, digital high definition, and that's 95.3 HD4. But our main signal, where you probably are tuning in, is 92.7. We argue for a local economy in the free market. And Mike is throwing out some fire there, breathing some fire. And I think he would say that perhaps one of the main ideas that we want to offer to you is that that you should be a belligerent claimant in person. A belligerent claimant, that's the person making a claim, a belligerent claimant in person. That's how we used to be, Americans. They were, Audrey Murphy type fighting people, Sylvester Stallone type fighting people, right? That's the belligerent claimant in person. But he's doing it for his family. He's doing it for his business, and he's asking a simple question: what's your authority? That is the question to ask. And we need to ask that question because for many things there is simply no authority for the state to act. And then because there's a program, there's an office that runs it, somehow it's lawful. But no. And so what we have to do is we always have to ask that question. I'm looking here and want to make mention of the No Sanctuary bill that the Republicans are passing. It's funny how the Republicans are trying to stop cities from being a sanctuary. But just think about this. As the national government is collapsing and the debt will catch up to it at some point, the lights will go out in the data mining centers that it runs in Utah, and hopefully many other agencies as well. Cities and states are going to have to be more independent. And I'm thinking, can Chattanooga be maybe an independent area? And so the idea of it being a sanctuary is very important. In many areas already, Chattanooga is a sanctuary. Now, this bill, I'm looking at 2332, the Yeager bill, wants there to be a ban on any independent city activity. That's just exactly in the wrong direction. If Republicans believe in self-government and local control, well, then why are they giving this lavish support to federal law, which may be unconstitutional? Why are they giving lavish support on limits on people who are here by God's providence here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, working hard, trying to rear families just like you are? And here we are saying that cities can't do that. They can't limit or prohibit any state government entity or official from communicating or cooperating with federal agencies or officials. So, in other words, this law would this bill would attack you if you are somehow telling your cops you can't deal with the feds and can't give them information. Isn't that a good thing? Don't we want local control and local protection of people who are here by God's providence in a locale? Do not aliens and strangers deserve protection? Did not the Israelites in their republic protect even runaway slaves in their borders? They protected them, and they gave them equal access to the law. In other words, God's law, his equity and justice, was given and accorded freely to all, whether you were an alien or an Israelite. There were not two laws. This kind of bill wants there to be two laws. This kind of Republican bill favors two laws, one for the stranger and one for the homeborn. I think that's very unfortunate. And if we are going to be independent in the future, economically at least, this kind of thing simply has to be opposed. David Tulis, River Radio.